Okay, this is the next episode of All Apologies, Guilt, and Blame. It's my third book in my series, Life Beyond Silence. My first book was titled Not a Victim, a Survivor, Life Beyond Domestic Violence and Rape. My second was titled Losing Touch with Reality. And I've done 3 podcasts now. This is the All Apologies podcast that you're listening to, but I did the other 2 on the other 2 books already. And if you're going to listen to me and listen to my story, I was just starting from the beginning, because this is my story. You know, I've lived a very colorful life and a long, winding, twisted, just tragic life. I've done a lot that I'm sorry for, and I've really kind of dug my own hole, or I guess you could say I threw gasoline on the fire all these years. I guess what I would say is that I made a lot of mistakes and that I am to blame for a lot of things that happened in my life. Even when you talk about domestic violence. So, yeah, when you're a domestic violence victim or survivor, which is what I'd prefer to be called, you are being hurt by the abuser. But at some point, you kind of have to take ownership of the fact that you may have seen those signs, the red flags, that it was not gonna be what you thought it should be. And you just ignored them. You know, you let your heart, if you were in love with somebody, you let it run your brain. And your brain was screaming, hey, wait, you know, he's an alcoholic, or hey, wait, he's doing drugs, or hey, wait, there's something weird here. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know which is which. Do you accept that you made a lot of mistakes and that this happened to you or that happened to you? Or do you take ownership, I guess, of it and just say, I made these choices? You know, there's a lot going on here. So if you hear any background noise, there's a whole family in the other room. And it's funny because I talk about Kyle a lot in my podcast. He was my third husband and the dad of my youngest daughter. And right at the same moment, like literally right at the same moment, he's in the other room. I'm at my daughter's house. He's in the other room. I cooked today. It's not that we're like close in any way. It's just that he's the only one that I can be around, and that we basically don't have any bad feelings towards each other, or at least I don't have any bad feelings towards him. And I think if he had bad feelings towards me, he wouldn't be in the other room, or he would basically let it be known. And he's never been like put off about being around me. And another thing, just putting it out there, he's remarried and he's been with this woman for quite a while. And to be honest, she's really nice. and I get along with her. She's sweet as she can be, and I'm able to talk to her when I'm not really able to talk to my ex for just whatever reason. I mean, I think it's just awkward if I have a conversation with him, because it's kind of like, yeah, we did that a long time ago. We got a divorce, and it's just awkward to talk to him. But talking to her is a pleasure, and I really like her and respect her, and I tell her how I feel. And she's just really nice. I just want to put that out there. So, anyway, he's here, by the way, at my daughter's to do some things for her, and I'm fine with that. I mean, Kyle's her dad, and he's been really, you know, the one that stepped up to do whatever it was that she needed. And I appreciate that. I mean, she's a grown woman now and has her own family, but it's really good that I'm her mother and I'm around, and he's her father and he's around. My first husband is dead. He died of cancer. I don't remember what kind of cancer, but he put me through hell. He really put me through hell. And I even remember at one time during our divorce, he sent me a card that said that the day I died, he would piss on my grave. How fun was that, to get a card like that? And then my second husband was my domestic violence abuser. And even though I did love him, and even though I know he did love me, his demons they were immense. And we had a very troublesome life together. He was my abuser, and there was lots of things that he did to me, and I've said it all in my podcast. And I even said how later he ended up killing himself. And so he's dead. So my first husband's dead. My second husband's dead. Kyle, like I said, is in the other room visiting with my youngest daughter. And my fourth husband is named Phil. And he's lives not far from my son. They work at literally the same place. And I don't know. I don't know how to describe their relationship, but when it comes to me and him, no, there's no talking. I think out of all these years, we've talked a few times on the phone. Like one time, my son, after he had grown up, or maybe he was like I don't know, an older teen, I guess I would say. But I remember one time he called me saying that my son was drunk and he had stood up to him like, I'm gonna fight you. And he said, I just punched him, like really punched him. And I said, what the hell? I was like so mad because my son had been given alcohol, and he was out there walking down the freeway because he was mad at his dad, and his dad had called me and said, I'm going to go look for him, but this is what happened. He stood up to me and I punched him. And I was like, please go find him. Number one, he's got alcohol in his system. Number two, I don't want him to get hit by a car. What the hell, you know? And he did end up finding him. And I don't know, there was a whole big story, which isn't mine to tell, but basically he ended up finding him. And my son wanted to go with one of his friends. And so my ex said, yeah, okay, you go with your friend and come home tomorrow. And that's kind of how the fight ended. But that was like years ago. And since then, there's been other times that things have gone bad or badly, I'll put it that way. So I don't really know what kind of relationship they have. I know that my son pretends they're fine and everything's fine, but as far as I'm concerned, Phil and me are not like Kyle and me in any way, shape, or form. And I will never be close to his new wife, or not new because they've been married for a while, but I will never be close to her ever because she's the one that injected herself in my marriage and he left me for her. So I have nothing to say. Am I as mad as I was at the beginning? No, I don't even care. You know, in my opinion, they both get what they deserve. In the end, they, especially him, will get what he deserves because he literally was never going to hurt me after what he had done. Which, if you've listened to my podcast, you've heard all the stories about what he did. So, all in all, Kyle is the one that I can at least be around. And it's good for my daughter that I can. Even my second daughter knows him, is cool with him. They've talked. Because he raised her for a while. So that's cool, you know. And I'm happy that I can at least speak to him, but I'm happier that I know his wife and I have her as a friend. So I just want to put that out there. Anyway, there's a lot going on here, so I'm not going to make this a long podcast, but I am going to say that when I left off in the other episode, I was seeing my therapist and she was telling me, you know, your family is pretty dysfunctional, especially your mom, your dad, your sister, and more so your mom than anything. And she said, if your mom, your sister, anybody for that matter is not making you happy or doesn't think of you in a good way and it's not a good, I guess, it's just not good for you to be around them, then you could cut them out of your life. And I told her, I can't. I mean, my mother is my mother. I grew up with her. I know what she did. I know how troubled our relationship is. But even though she's never forgiven me for a lot of things, and even though I'm like the black sheep of the family, I look at it as though I made peace with it. And I wouldn't want to not be able to speak to my own mother. I just wouldn't want that. That's not what I would want. Same thing for my dad. You know, there were times in my early years that I didn't speak to him and that I really was disgusted with him. And we had a very troubled relationship. Even years ago, every time I would say anything about needing something, he might give it to me, but I basically had to beg for it. And he basically, over the years, told me over and over again how full of mistakes I had done, like so many, and how he felt about me not being able to be productive in my life, is what basically he meant, you know. And he even picked at me about my weight. There was times where he was really over the top about talking to me about my weight and about how if I was going to be single and find anybody, I needed to really work on my weight and looking better. And I thought, I mean, I remember how devastated I was because, you know, I knew that I was a little heavy. I knew that I wasn't thin anymore. I knew that I was packing on weight. It wasn't, when I say I'm heavy, I mean just that. I'm heavy. But I'm not like so uncontrollably overweight that I can't do my getting up and down thing, or, you know, I'm not, I don't know. I don't know. It's like people that are thin like to point fingers, even if you're a little bit overweight. They like to point fingers and say, you know, you need to really not eat that or whatever. And I get that. But sometimes, if you think about it, sometimes pointing fingers and saying you really don't need to be eating that, that's not a good way to like try to change somebody's eating habits. As a matter of fact, that probably makes them eat more because they're depressed and they feel, I don't know, like life's futile. And like I said, it's really busy here and I don't want to make this too long, but yeah, there's been a lot go on between me and my dad. But over the years, we've kind of mended fences. We never talked about it, but he accepts me and talks to me more than my mother does. And I know this sounds really bad, but when I got my money, he seemed to be more positive at talking to me. I doubt if he would ever admit that, but before I got my money, I remember him saying, you know, every time I call you, there's nothing really good going on. You're, you know, having this happen or that happen, or it's just not what he wanted to hear. But after I got my money, he seemed to like be more positive when he talked to me, and that's okay. You know, I had already mended fences with him before I got my money. And since I've got my money, things have been even better. I know that sounds stupid. It's not like he gets any of it or anything, but he's been more positive about my life and talking to me. And he's tried to help me, like, decide what to do. But he knows I'm a grown woman and I've always done what I wanted to do. So I guess he knows I'm not necessarily going to listen unless I want to. But it's been hard. But as far as letting him go, like my therapist said, I can't do that either. Number one, he's a positive person in my life now, way more than I ever thought he would be. And even my stepmom is, for the most part, fine with me. You know, I used to think she was really opinionated and, I don't know, said things that I felt like were kind of two-sided. You know how somebody will say something and it makes you think there's a meaning behind it. And, you know, it's been hard over the years. But like I said, I told my therapist I can't stop talking to my family. I just can't. It's just ingrained in me that I want to hear their voice and I want to stay in touch. And like when I know I haven't talked about this, but eventually I do end up having a heart attack. So the only thing I'll say right now is my whole heart issue, when it came to a head, it was my dad that I wanted there. I felt like if he was there, that he would help if I didn't make it through. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that right now. That's on down the road. But getting back to, like I said, I was talking to my therapist about all this and about my drama and my heart and my life, and everything that's in the podcast is what came out in therapy. But, you know, I told her I take full responsibility. I have a lot of guilt and a lot of blame that I accept. And all apologies for the most part. The ending of my series, All Apologies, is exactly how I see it. I know the band Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, I think his name is, titled the album All Apologies, or a song All Apologies, because it was like his last big hit before he died. And a lot of people have different thoughts on why he wrote the words, and was it a way of him saying goodbye, because he committed suicide and died, I think. I'm not up on all of that. I did listen to Nirvana, and I did like some of their songs. And I do remember when he died. But I don't have any comments to make about that because I don't know. When I got the title, when I decided on the title for this book, All Apologies, I was talking to my sister about how I wanted to finalize and end the series and make sure that I said for sure to end it that I was sorry for everything. Really, really sorry. And she said, because I asked her if All Apologies seemed okay to use as a title. And she actually knew about the Nirvana thing. And she was like, oh, that makes sense, and she was telling me, and she's like 9 years younger than me and more up on music than I am, definitely. But she was telling me what it was supposed to have meant or whatever for the band and for Kurt Cobain. And I told her, well, my title was going to be All Apologies, Guilt, and Blame, because that's just how I feel. I feel like I carry a lot of guilt. I take full responsibility and blame for my fucked up life and for how many mistakes I made. Just like I told the therapist, I get it, People told me to do one thing and I did the other. And I just kept throwing gasoline on the fire or digging a deeper hole, however you want to put it. I just made one mistake after another, even with Kyle, and he's in the other room. I maybe shouldn't have married somebody I barely knew. I maybe shouldn't have gone to Germany. I don't know. I enjoyed Germany, but I distanced myself from him. He distanced himself from me, and our marriage fell apart. And then I found somebody else, which was even a huge mistake, probably more than the one of getting with Kyle. Definitely more than the one of getting with Kyle. But that's me, I'm one screw up after another. That's what I do. But I don't really have an answer for it. I never did. In the end, I guess I just look back and think I was trying my best to have a good life, but instead I was just making all the wrong choices and just kept fucking it up worse and worse. Jumping from one fire to the next, kept digging a deeper hole. However you look at it. At one time, I kind of imagine that if I was to explain it to somebody, I would say I was holding on to a ledge by my fingertips and praying that I didn't lose my grip, because I was really bad off, and I don't know that I'm not completely over that, but at one point in my life I was falling apart. And if you've listened to my podcast, you know which part that is. But that was significant, definitely. But I don't know that that one thing, that one real bad mistake, defines me. I just don't know that. I know that I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and that's probably one of my biggest. I encourage you to look back at the ending of my first book. But I can't say that that in itself is the one that defines me. It's one of them for sure. But I've made so many mistakes. You know, it's kind of like there's a bunch of balls in a lottery, like turning machine, where they're turning it and the balls spit out, and they spit out numbers, and those are your lottery numbers. Well, if you put a bunch of balls in a machine and you labeled them with all the screw ups I've done in my life, most any of them popping out of that machine would be just tragic. I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I have a lot of guilt, and I take a lot of blame. But I mean, there's nothing you can do. There's no way to ever take it back. And in a way, I think a lot of people wishes, just like me, that there was some way to take back those mistakes and start over and have redos and things like that. But there's just not. There's just not. And you kind of just have to accept at some point that this is just what it is. You did it. You just have to acknowledge what you did, and you have to move on from it. Well, evidently my whole family, part of my whole family, not my entire family, but part of my family is in the other room having a great time. And here I am in my room, just, actually it's not even my room, but I'm just sitting in another room. Today's been a pretty long day. There's been a lot of people working on the house, and the house belongs to my daughter, and I've just been cooking for them, which that I was fine with, but it's actually the most cooking I've done in years. I can't remember the last time I told them, I said, It's hard to remember the last time I even cooked for a whole bunch of people. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 people in the other room. I mean, that's a lot. And I cooked meals all day, but I'm exhausted. So I'm going to get off here. But please keep listening. I know my podcasts are not typical, maybe, but I'm not a podcaster. I'm just trying to do the best I can. But please keep listening. There's a lot more to come. I'll do my very best to answer any questions or comments you may have. And they're welcome if you make them. I've gotten some comments, and I guess, like I said, I'm just tired of a lot of things. So I'll end it with that. I'm tired of a lot of things. So I'll see you next time. Thank you.